So today I wanted to make this video about my breastfeeding journey along with the struggles that I've had with it. So when I found out I was pregnant, I knew I wanted to breastfeed my baby. Unfortunately, when sorry if you hear her, she's right here. So unfortunately, when she was born, she had jaundice. I was breastfeeding her, but my milk hadn't came in yet, and I remember they had told me in order for the jaundice to get better, she needed indirect sunlight and she needed to eat a lot so she can poop it out. The problem is when the babies have jaundice, they get very sleepy, so when she was eating, you had to keep stimulating her to eat. I had her on a Saturday and my milk didn't come in until the Tuesday after, so that was 3 days later. That third day was the day she actually had to go back into the hospital because her bilirubin levels were getting too high and it was becoming dangerous, so she needed to go into the hospital to get the lights. While she was in the hospital, I didn't know she was going into the hospital until that day, literally like 2 hours before she had to go in. So I had never pumped in my life, and my milk had barely just came in that day, like a few hours before she had to go in. So I've never pumped. So we got to the hospital, and that's when they were getting all her labs and everything, and they needed to feed her. And they told me I couldn't breastfeed her at the time because she needed to be under the lights because her bilirubin levels were too high and it was dangerous to take her out of the lights. And so I said, okay, feed her formula. I mean, I need to do what's best for my child. She needs to eat. And then in the meantime, like, can somebody set me up where I can pump so I can pump milk and give it to her? And so they had a lactation consultant come and talk to me, and she set me up with a pump at the hospital. And in NICU, you can't sleep there, so it was already, by the time they got all her labs and were feeding her, it was probably around 11 p.m. and 10 or 11, and then I was able to pump, and I got, I think, 4 ounces at that time. But my baby, when she was taking the bottle, she was taking like 1.5 ounces to 2 ounces every 3 hours. And so I had left my breast milk that I had pumped, I left it there, and then my husband and I, we had to go home so that way we can come back in the morning to see our baby. So we went home, and every 2 to 3 hours I was pumping and saving as much milk as I can to take it to the hospital for her. So on Wednesday morning we went back to the hospital, and they were putting my breast milk in bottles for her, and she would drink that. And then on Wednesday she had 2 lights on her. She had the blanket lights underneath her. Hey, mama. She had the blanket lights underneath her, and then she had the lights on top of her. And so on Wednesday they were able to remove the top lights because her levels were coming down. They were still high where she needed the lights, but not where she needed both of them. So they allowed us to carry her at that time, and they're like, okay, you can breastfeed her if you'd like, blah blah blah. So I said, okay, let's try it. So I was trying to breastfeed her, and she was refusing the breast. They said it's because with the bottle she doesn't have to work as hard, and when she tried to get on the breast, she can tell the difference, and she was refusing it. And so it was very discouraging at the time. I would just start crying, and she would start crying, and we're just both of us really frustrated. And so then we gave it a try for maybe like 10 minutes, but she would just get so angry. Hold on a second, I need to go feed her. Okay, I'm back. So where was I? They were telling me that it was easier for her to get the milk out of the bottle than having to work for her on the breast, so that's why she was preferring the bottle over the breast. So at that time I just felt so defeated, and all these things were going through my head. I'm like, I'm not gonna be able to breastfeed her. I don't have formula at home. What if I don't have enough milk to feed as much as she needs? And so all these things were going through my head, and I just thought to myself, I'm just gonna keep pumping as much as I can to make sure like if she can't breastfeed, at least I can give her my milk. And so we were doing that. She ended up getting discharged Thursday afternoon. We got home, and thank God that night she started latching on again at the breast. And I was just so happy at that time. I was like, okay, like it's not over, we can still do it. And so she was latching on, and then after a little while she was having trouble latching. So I've had like a struggle going on with her since she was born. She was having like a struggle latching, and then she would start nursing for like an hour at a time, and I would still try to pump after that to make sure I had milk on the side for her just in case we had to go back to bottle feeding. And when she went to her doctor's appointment, she had gained weight. So I was like, okay, so she is eating, we're doing good. And we were doing just the breast. And then she had gained a pound in about 9 days. And so her doctor's like, oh, that's impressive, blah, 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 blah. And we continued to breastfeed. And one of the struggles that I had was in the hospital, she liked the football hold. So I was doing that at home. And then every time she would try to eat, once my milk was in, she'd start choking and she'd be pulling off. And I didn't know what to do. And she wouldn't latch on right. Like she would start to latch, and then it'd start getting really painful because she would only get like the nipple part and not more of like the breast tissue. And so I was getting discouraged again. I'm like, what do I do? And so then I looked on YouTube, and I was able to find other positions. And now she still doesn't like the football hold, but she will she likes like the cross body one. So like I'll hold her across my body, and she nurses just fine like that. So after she had gained the pound in 9 days, we continued breastfeeding her. And then she started, I think it was around 6 to 8 weeks, she started getting really, really bloated, really, really gassy. She was pooping like 8 to 12 times a day. And we didn't know what was going on. So then her doctor wanted to see her back in 3 weeks. And so we went back in 3 weeks, and she had gained another 3 pounds. So a pound a week. And he's like, I think you have like an oversupply of milk, and she's overfeeding. And so I was like, okay, so before she wasn't feeding enough, or she wasn't able to poop enough to get rid of the jaundice, but then now she's overfeeding, like. So what we had to do was, for maybe like 4 days straight, I had to just exclusively pump, and we had to give her just 3 ounces every 3 hours. And in the beginning it was hard because she was used to eating a lot more than that, because when I would pump, I'd get between like 4 and 8 ounces like every 3 to 4 hours. So I know she was eating more than what she should have been at that time. And so we were doing 3 ounces every 3 hours. The first couple days were a little rough. She was kind of cranky after, but then her stomach got used to it, and she was able to do the 3 ounces every 3 hours. After like those 3 or 4 days, then we started switching out one of the bottle feeds to a nursing session. And so we did that, and then every couple days we'd switch out another bottle for a nursing session. And then after maybe about a week and a half, she was exclusively nursing again. We had started her on a probiotic, and she was taking vitamin D because breastfed babies need vitamin D. And so what we're doing now is we're still nursing. We're breastfeeding all the feeds except one of the feeds. We'll do a bottle so we can put her probiotic and her vitamin D in it. But otherwise she's nursing fine, and she's able to go longer stretches without eating. And so now I was very rigid on the time. I'm like, okay, it's been 3 hours, she needs to eat. Or if she was hungry at like 2.5 hours or 2 hours and 45 minutes, I was like, no, it hasn't been 3 hours. I was just very paranoid that she was going to gain too much weight, or she's going to have other issues. But now we got to a point on her last doctor's appointment, she had gained a pound, or a little over a pound, in a month. So her doctor's like, that's perfect, that's what we like. And so now what we do is I still feed on demand. So whenever she's hungry, I feed her. I don't look at the clock anymore. But she has been going longer stretches. So she'll sometimes, I think the longest she's ever gone was 7 hours without eating, and that was at night, and that was one time. But normally she's kind of going around 3 to 4.5 hours without eating. So I nurse her whenever she's hungry. If she's hungry at 2.5 hours, and like, I'll feed her, because I know she'll go longer without eating, and she hasn't been having the bloatiness, the gassiness. She's been having her over 6 wet diapers a day. She's not pooping as much. She's pooping like twice a day, maybe 1 to 2 times a day now. And then let me see, maybe about this last week actually, she had a little bit of bloating. It's like 2 or 3 of the days, and then she started getting mucus in her stool, and I was like, okay, now what? And so I messaged her doctor, and he told me that it could be a lactose sensitivity. So he suggested that I decrease my dairy intake or stop my dairy intake to see if that will help her. So that's currently where we're at. I have decreased my dairy intake, and I've noticed the last 2 days that I've done that, she's not having as much bloatiness. So I don't know if that's that. We're going to continue doing that for about a week or 2. If it does help, then that's something I need to do for her so she's not uncomfortable. If she still has the mucus in the stool or she's still having some bloatiness, then it might be something else. But I'm willing to do whatever I need to do to make sure she's comfortable and she's healthy and happy. So that's where we're at our breastfeeding journey. And I'm just glad that I'm able to experience it and bond with my baby like that. I don't know how long I will be able to do it. I want to do it for, my goal is a year. So I do have some milk stashed up. When I was producing so much milk, I stashed up a bunch of milk in the fridge. In the freezer, because it's good for 6 months in the freezer. I think I have maybe about 5 or 6 days worth, like full days worth. So hopefully once I do go back to work, I can pump while I'm there and then bring that back to her, because she will be needing to use the bottle at that time when I'm not with her, but at least she'll have my breast milk. So I'm gonna keep trying to do it as long as I can, but in the end, as long as she's fed, that's all that matters. So we'll see what happens from here. Until the next video, bye.